evening, and here we are once again at the very sunny and very lovely corner of Glenwood and Lunt. We are in the heart of Rogers Park. You're listening to Live from the Heartland, broadcast every Saturday morning from the stage at the Heartland Cafe over WLUW 88.7, Chicago Sound Alliance, Loyola University's community radio station. I am Michael James, the host for this morning's edition of Live from the Heartland. And we have a really good lineup. A little bit later, we're going to have members of Rising Up Angry here in town celebrating their 40th anniversary from the founding of that newspaper and organization that, along with the Black Panther parties and the Young Lords and other groups, formed the early Rainbow Coalition. We're going to have some people coming from an organization working in Honduras, talking about what's going on in Honduras and the restoration of democracy and the development of protest and change in that country. And we're going to start off the show with Bob and Eileen Heineman, who are the proud parents of Molly Heineman, who was on our show about a year ago before going off to Uganda in the continent of Africa, where she works with a group called CROSO. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning, Michael.
Morning, Michael. It's great to be at breakfast at the Heartland again.
It's great to have you both in the house. Last year we had your daughter Molly, who we've known since she was a little baby, actually since she was born.
Mm-hmm.
And we are very proud to say that Molly went off to Africa, and she took her studies and turned them into some good work for the people. And she's about to have a benefit here. I don't think she's coming, but you guys,
No,
she's in
not.
Africa. But you people are doing the legwork on it. So tell us a little bit about CROSO and what's that all about.
Well, CROSO came out of her experience in Uganda, where she volunteered at a place called CRO, Child Restoration Outreach. And that organization exists to help children who have been living on the streets, either because their parents are dead because of malaria or AIDS, or because their parent is not able to work and they need to earn some money by counting coffee beans or finding old tin. And this organization helps the children by basically restoring their childhood, allows them to learn how to be a child again, to play. They spend about a year in what's called the rehab class, just learning how to be a kid. And we had the opportunity to visit there and see some of these children who, when you see the kids out on the street, you just realize, looking in their eyes, these kids have had a very different life than the kids here. Molly worked there for about 6 months and was amazed to find out that this program, which supports the kids after this year in rehab, they then go into public schools in Uganda. And this CRO supports them financially through secondary school. And then the young people who had finished secondary school, when Molly said, "So what are your plans?" they would say, "Well, we don't know." And she'd say, "Why not?" Because there was no money for anything after that. So CROSO, which stands for Child Restoration Outreach Support Organization, exists to provide money for them to keep going. And so it's to educate young people who have successfully completed high school and to allow them to go to school in Uganda and become active, participating people in the Ugandan society.
Well, how did this come to be? I mean, did Molly start this? Did Molly go to work in a program? And how big an operation is CROSO?
CROSO now has 4 students in post-secondary education. CROSO came about purely because of Molly's experience with several of these young men who were successful high school graduates, but they had no future. They have no family to support them in post-secondary education. Jobs are incredibly scarce in Uganda, and these young people had no prospects for the future, but Molly helped them to have dreams for something beyond going back to the streets.
Now, Molly didn't just get this from nowhere. Tell us a little bit about Molly and how she became a concerned citizen and a world activist.
Well, she does come from both Bob and me, who were raised by parents who were activists in the 40s and the 50s, and we continued that. Our kids were raised in places like the Heartland Cafe, as you mentioned, and
And St. Nicholas Parish
in Evanston was a key part of that. Molly and her brother David both were fortunate to be part of young people's groups in our Catholic parish in Evanston that really encouraged them to think about the world and to not be as self-centered as most of us Americans are.
And when did she first go off to Africa? And how did that come to be? How did she decide to go off and experience that continent and the streets there, and then help to found Croso?
We remember in the spring of her freshman year sitting with her. She was down at the University of Dayton, which was also a very seminal influence on her activism, that she said, I think I'd like to go to Africa. And Eileen and I said, oh, that's a great idea. After you graduate from college, you could go off in the Peace Corps or whatever. And she said, no, I mean soon, like my junior year abroad. I think should be in Uganda rather than one of those typical junior year abroad programs.
And
like Italy or Spain.
Right. And she actually had lined up, she had something else going on that night while we were visiting, but she said, you need to go and see this film that I've seen. And we went to see a film about the invisible children in northern Africa. And as soon as we saw that, we said, okay, we get it. She is clearly hooked into this. And we said, well, maybe it needs to be a whole year and not just a semester. Fortunately, it was only a semester at that time because we weren't ready to lose her for that long yet.
The film, Invisible Children, tells the story of the Gulu walk. This is the children of northern Uganda, because of the violence in their villages, walk to the major town nearby, sometimes for a couple of hours every day, because if they sleep in their own huts, the warring forces will come in and scoop them up and make them child soldiers.
So every single night in northern Uganda, children walk miles and miles and miles to sleep together in bus stations and get up in the morning and walk back miles and miles and miles to be back farming with their family or whatever. But that's the only way that they can be safe. And so Molly saw that film and realized, I have to be in this place where children have to live like this.
Well, as concerned parents, when your daughter went off to Africa, despite your idealism and your conviction and your good politics, were you a little apprehensive?
Not as apprehensive as we were just missing her.
And not as apprehensive as one of her uncles who thought
exactly.
it was a terrible
One of her
idea.
uncles who grabbed me at her going away party and saying, "What the hell is wrong with you, Eileen?" We worried that she would not know enough to not be in unsafe places. But once she was there and we understood that she was connected to a group that said, "You really can't go to this part or that part," then that was okay.